Hey guys, for the first time in a long time, I thought it would be nice to bring back my jersey backdrop in my videos. And for this video, with the Ottawa Senators currently playing the Pittsburgh Penguins in the Eastern Conference Final as I'm filming this, I thought it would be nice to use my Senators jersey as well as one of my Penguins jerseys as the backdrop for this video. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why I think it's time to get rid of the shootout. I'm going to talk about why I don't like it and ultimately why I think the NHL, the IIHF, and hockey leagues far and wide need to get rid of the shootout. So first off, there's been two recent international hockey tournaments that have really pissed me off with the shootout. Now, you got to understand this. I'm a Canadian, and in recent months, I've seen Team Canada not only lose the gold medal game in the World Junior Hockey Championship, but I've also recently just watched Canada lose to Sweden in the gold medal game of the World Hockey Championship in yet another shootout. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a bitter, stuck-up, angry Canadian. That is not why I'm mad about the shootout. I'm mad about the shootout because I don't think a gold medal game, or a playoff game for that matter, should ever be decided by a breakaway competition instead of actual hockey. And by the way, I want to mention this here. I'm not making this video to take anything away from the Swedish team that just won the gold medal at the World Hockey Championship, nor am I making this video to take anything away from the United States World Junior Hockey team that just won the 2017 World Juniors gold medal. This is not to take anything away from those teams. And as a Canadian, I want to congratulate both the Americans for winning the World Juniors and for Sweden for just winning the gold medal at the World Hockey Championship, because I think that they won the championships fair and square. Under the current rules, they won fair and square, and they deserved to win. They were the better teams at the end of the day. They did win in a shootout. And with that, and with the shootout being the deciding factor in the gold medal games, those two teams were the better teams, and they did deserve to win. And this is not to take anything away from either team. Now, I can understand some people watching this saying, oh, this guy's just bitter and being a sore loser, and oh, this guy's just pissed off because Canada lost. That is not it, all right? And it's easy to assume that. But for me, I'm frustrated because I don't believe any gold medal game should ever be decided by a shootout. I also don't believe that for IIHF sanctioned events like the World Juniors and the World Hockey Championship, and even the Ivan Helenka tournament for the junior under 18, for the junior squads, I don't think those tournaments should have shootouts after the round robin. At least after the round robin, it should be sudden death. But for me personally, I think shootouts need to be gone altogether. I think that in the round robin of any IIHF event like the World Juniors or the World Hockey Championship, if the game cannot be decided in regulation, have 5 minutes of 4-on-4, and if that is not enough, then 5 minutes of 3-on-3 after that, and if you still cannot figure out a winner, call the game a tie. Because I don't think it's fair that if a team is really good, has players that are really good at breakaways, and what I'm trying to say is, I don't think that a team that has more players that are better at breakaways than another team should be winning games. It's been the difference between a gold medal and a silver medal for Team Canada at the World Juniors and now the World Hockey Championship. And I know it seems a little bit fishy for me saying this as a Canadian now that Canada has lost 2 events in the past 6 months involving gold medals. They've lost 2 gold medals in the past 6 months as a result of shootout losses. And I know it's easy for people to say, hey, this guy's just pissed off because Canada lost. Well, I'm going to throw this in. There was one year back in like 2007 or something like that when Team Canada defeated the United States in the semifinals of the World Junior Hockey Championship in a shootout to not only go to the gold medal game against Russia. I think it was Russia, but they actually eventually won that tournament and won the gold medal. And I thought that wasn't right. And I'm saying this as a Canadian. Don't get me wrong, of course I was happy to see Canada win, but I did not feel even back then that that was the right way for Canada to win that game. If they were going to win that game, I think they should have won that game in sudden death overtime. I'm sorry, but if a game cannot be decided after 10 minutes of overtime, I think it should be a draw. I think they should call it a tie, nobody wins. Because I don't think it's fair that a breakaway competition, which is called a shootout, should be the reason why a certain team wins their division or they win a playoff berth while another team gets screwed over because they lose in a shootout. I'm sorry, but I think that's not right. And I understand that people have gotten used to the NHL and all these other hockey leagues far and wide finishing their games during at least the regular season in a shootout. I know we're used to it, but I don't think it's right. Because, for example, the Minnesota Wild this year, and I'm just making this up as an example, as a what if. Say that Chicago won the Central Division, the Chicago Blackhawks won the Central Division because they were better at shootouts than the Minnesota Wild were. So because the Chicago Blackhawks played 5 shootout games and won all 5 of them, and I'm just making this up as an example. This didn't actually happen, by the way. But say Chicago plays 7 shootout games during the regular season, and Minnesota also plays 7 shootout games during the regular season. Chicago wins all 7 of the games in shootouts, but Minnesota only wins 5 of them. So because of that, Chicago has more wins. And at the end of the year, because Chicago has more points because they won more shootout games, in this case that I'm making up. So say both teams have 50 wins, but Chicago won 7 shootout games and Minnesota only won 5 out of the 7 games that they played, and Chicago won all 7 of theirs. Then Chicago wins the Central Division, and then Minnesota has to play the St. Louis Blues because they didn't win more games in the shootout. So because of a skills competition, a breakaway competition, the Minnesota Wild have to play the St. Louis Blues instead of the Nashville Predators. And don't even get me started about the Chicago Blackhawks, because as a fan of the Hawks, I thought that Chicago's performance against the Predators was downright embarrassing. And a huge congrats to you Predator fans out there, because Nashville kicked the Blackhawks' butts, and they absolutely deserved to move on. They absolutely deserved to beat the Blackhawks because they were much, much better than Chicago was during that entire series. Chicago deserved to be swept, in my opinion. They dug a hole. They dug themselves too big of a hole, and it was too late to come back. And they didn't even show up as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, I'm not going to talk about that anymore because that was just downright brutal to watch. But anyways, my point is this. The shootout screws teams over. There are situations where teams can make the playoffs over other teams because they're better at a shootout than actual hockey. And I don't think that's right. Like, for example, maybe instead of Nashville making the playoffs, maybe the Los Angeles Kings could have made the playoffs if there wasn't a shootout. Maybe, for example, and I'm just making this up, maybe the Los Angeles Kings get screwed over and don't make the playoffs because they can't win in the shootout. Whereas the Nashville Predators, because they're better at a breakaway challenge, they get to crack in the final playoff spot and could even eventually win the Stanley Cup. And I'm just making this up as an example. This didn't actually happen. But the reason I'm making this up is because I'm trying to prove a point. The shootout is a breakaway competition. It isn't actual hockey. And because some teams are better at it than others, it can determine certain teams' places in the standings, could be the difference between a playoff spot and not making the playoffs. And it could also put a team up against a team that they shouldn't be playing. Like, for example, maybe the Chicago Blackhawks should have played St. Louis instead of Nashville, but got Nashville because they were better at the shootout than Minnesota. And I'm just making that up as an example. But you see my point. The shootout can change standings for all the wrong reasons just because some teams are better at breakaway competitions, at breakaways, than another team is. And I don't think that's right. I think in the NHL, it should be 5 minutes of 4-on-4, and if that can't decide it, go to an extra 5 minutes, except with 3-on-3 to really open up the ice, and if that isn't enough to find a winner, call the game a tie. It should not go to a skills competition to decide a winner. And there may be some people who disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't expect everyone to agree with me on this, but I think it's a joke. I think it's so stupid that Team Canada has been screwed over twice in 2 straight gold medal games because of shootouts. I'm sorry, but Sweden and the United States, in my opinion, should have had to win their games in sudden death overtime, not shootouts. And I'm not saying this to, once again, I'm not saying this to take away their victories. Sweden and the United States won those tournaments respectively, fair and square under the current rules, and they deserved to win. They won those tournaments fair and square. And I'm being very honest when I say that. Sweden and the United States won their tournaments fair and square as far as I'm concerned. But I still think that they should have won their games in sudden death overtime. A breakaway competition should not decide the winner of a gold medal, nor should it decide the winner of a hockey game, as far as I'm concerned. Now, for people who love the shootout, I think you're going to like my idea here. But anyways, here's what I think they should do with the shootout. I think the shootout should be used to decide preseason games. I think that if a preseason game cannot be decided in regulation and maybe 5 minutes of overtime, then go to a shootout. Keep the shootout for preseason games. Make it a little bit different than the regular season. Change it up a little. Why not? I think that I would be totally on board with that. And for the NHL's All-Star game, for example. For the All-Star game, for example, say now with the 4 divisions now having their own teams and doing this little 3-on-3 tournament that they do now. Say the Central Division plays the Atlantic Division, and after their game is over, they're tied 5-5. Since it's the All-Star game, why not have those 2 teams go to a shootout to decide who moves on to and plays, say, the Pacific Division in the All-Star Tournament final? Something like that I think would be great. Keep the shootout for the All-Star competition, for the skills challenge. Keep it for the little skills competitions that some teams host, like the Vancouver Canucks, for example. Have the shootout for the All-Star skills competition at the All-Star weekend for the NHL. And have the shootout to decide to break ties in the All-Star game, or in this case now, All-Star games. And keep the shootout to decide preseason games after 5 minutes of overtime, of 3-on-3 overtime. In those cases, I think that would be great. In those cases, I think the shootout would be great because it's a fun change. It doesn't have any actual implications on a tournament or a regular season. It doesn't affect the standings, and it's just a fun, unique way to change up the preseason and the All-Star games from the regular NHL season or the regular round robins of any hockey tournament, such as the World Juniors or even the Memorial Cup. Like, even the Memorial Cup final is determined by sudden death overtime. That's the way a championship game should be decided. Even the NHL. As soon as the playoffs hit, it's sudden death overtime. Even in the regular season of Major League Baseball. You don't see them having a home run derby. You have sudden death innings until the bottom of the inning, of the extra inning, is over and a team has more runs than the other team. That's the way it should be. In football, even in football, there's overtime. And if you can't decide a winner, they don't go to some kicking challenge with the kickers to determine who's going to win the game based on who gets, say each kicker gets 3 tries to hit a 50-yard field goal. They don't do that. They have an overtime, and then if they can't decide a winner, the game is considered a tie. That's the way it should be. And I think the NHL and hockey in general needs to get rid of the shootout from any regular season game, any round robin game, and absolutely for any quarter, semifinal, or gold medal game in any double IHF or any hockey tournament for that matter. And I just think it's ridiculous that we are still having games such as gold medal games in the World Hockey Championship as well as the World Junior Hockey Championship being decided, having the entire tournament, the gold medal champion, decided by a shootout. Sorry, but I think it is so wrong. I don't believe for a second that a team should win the gold medal at the World Juniors or the IIHF World Hockey Championship or any event for that matter in a shootout. If a team wins the gold medal or they win the Memorial Cup or they win a hockey game during the NHL's regular season or the American Hockey League or the CHL or ECHL and on and on and on, the game should be decided by either sudden death overtime in the postseason or a quarterfinal or a semifinal or a championship game, or there should be 10 minutes of overtime, and then if that can't finish a game, call it a draw, call it a tie, game over, time's up, too bad, so sad. Anyways, you guys, I've been talking for 17 minutes now, and that's why I think the shootout needs to go. I don't think it's a fair way to end games, especially gold medal games. And I'm not just saying that as a pissed off Canadian hockey fan. I'm saying that because I don't think a gold medal game or a playoff game should ever be decided by a breakaway competition. And I would honestly, and I even think that regular season games and round robin games should not be decided by shootouts either. All right, so anyways, you guys, with that, I'm going to call it a wrap, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And as always, until my next video, take care, and as always, bye for now.